sirs, my name is Jaipur Yadav, and on behalf of all the team members and faculty coordinators, I extend warm welcome to VOX PERITUS, and it is a student-led podcast initiative. Before we begin with the questions, I would really appreciate if you could share your experience at Manipal University so far.
So I came here in the morning, and first of all, my first impression was great campus, great students. I could see them all over the building, and they were enjoying. Then I interacted with faculty members. I think you've got excellent faculty here. A lot of them asked very relevant questions, very research-based. So I think it's an excellent institution in making in overall, and you're in good hands.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to have you here. So I have a series of questions to address. So if you permit, shall we start?
Yes, please.
In India's ongoing efforts to promote economic growth and enhance living standards, how can policymakers, legal institutions, and civil society collaborate to effectively incorporate the concepts of rights of nature in the country's development plans, ensuring ecological conservation, which also meeting the legitimate needs of aspiration of India's expanding population?
I think that's an excellent question, and it encapsulates a lot of issues that India is facing right now. We have one of the most polluted cities in the world. We know that, and however, we are the most populated country in the world as well. We are very aspirational, and we are a growing country, and we are one of the largest economies as well. So the issues are polycentric and multitudinal at level. So to fix those issues, we can't see unilateral. We can't have unilateral solutions as well. So let me frame this answers from various perspectives. Now, what is rights of nature? Right of nature would be that we as human beings have certain fundamental rights. Like initially, recently we have been told that we have right against the adverse impact of climate change by the Supreme Court. We have right to life. Accordingly, there is a trend where rivers could have right to sustain themselves, right to clean themselves over the period of time, and right to be clean primarily. Now, giving that right to the nature means that we need to change our relationship with these resources now. And I say resources as a term to nature with a lot of reservation, because they are not resources, but they are our co-inhabitant in the world. So I think the solution from the civil society, from the law or legal fraternity, and from everyone is to be based on science. We need to make sure that the conservation, the development is science-based. And with science, I don't mean that you just transplant some research from the US and the UK and global north and implement it in India. We need our own science. That means that if there is a way to extract natural resources and use it in our day-to-day life, we need to conduct science in India for that, according to our value system, according to our local geography, according to how our rivers are systemized. But unfortunately, we have relied on Western science over the period of time, which is ill-fitted to Indian systems. And therefore, we need scientific development. And once we have scientific development for protection of everything, I think these issues will fall in place over the period of time.
Sir, so do you think traditional system works well in this scenario?
Okay, so I think most of India's traditional systems were all about decentralization, looking at the bottom level, collaborative, where people collaborate with each other, conserve things according to local knowledge. I think that plays a crucial role. Our local knowledge, our traditional knowledge, they play a very, very important role. But we cannot underestimate the role of applied science, role of science in the form of, if I break it down in a reductionist way, then the physics, chemistry, and biology, and what it tells us when it applied to our natural environment. So we need a mix of both. I think a mix of both will help us to conserve our natural resources. Again, I say it with a lot of reservation. These are rivers, birds, and our co-inhabitants. Let me give you an example. For instance, setting a threshold for air pollution. In India, we set threshold for air pollution based on a lot of metrics which are developed in the West. We need to develop our own metrics, which suits our own Indian bodies and Indian population and India's flora and fauna. Similarly, the way we extract oil and natural gas, we base it, our rules and regulation, we transplant it from different countries and just implement in India without contextualizing them. So we need to have a scientific community which integrate local knowledge, narratives, public values, as well as our regional variations. And then only we can have a symbiotic relationship. We need to get away with this transplant kind of a science-based mechanism. Yeah.
I totally agree to your point, sir. Moving on to the next question. In light of India being one of the major countries in carbon emissions, how can international cooperation and domestic climate law work together to ensure responsible emissions reduction while supporting India's development needs?
Okay. My first response to this would be, although they say that India is third largest emitter, we need to see the difference between the second largest emitter and the third largest emitter. If you see the difference between China and India, it's huge. China emits much, much, much more than India. The per capita emission is much more than India. And if we see per capita emission, what each individual vis-a-vis what the emission of the country is, India ranks somewhere at the lowest in the world. So the notion that India emits a lot is, I find it misleading. So I would not say that India is a major emitter. If you see India just as a mass of land with people on it, yes. But if you see per capita, India as a living country, then I think we need more nuances before characterizing India as a major emitter. So my first response to that would be this. My second response to this question would be, I think the answer lies here on systematic changes. For instance, India does not have a climate legislation. We do not have a domestic level umbrella climate law. However, we have taken many administrative steps. For example, in India, we have renewable energy certificates. That means companies that distribute electricity across India, they need to buy certain percentages of solar energy. Plus, we have some kind of taxation in sustainable investment by RBI. So we have a lot of policies all here and there. We need a nodal agency which take care of all these policies, weave them in, and present it as a comprehensive framework, which I think a climate legislation would do in India. So I think we are of a nation which desperately needs climate legislation because we have climate action weaved in administrative regulations in different sectors, but we don't have a narrative or we don't have an institutional backing to it. So I think we need that, A. B, we need a climate tribunal. We need to make our own climate science. We rely a lot on, which is a good thing, we rely a lot on international panel for climate change reports, which is intergovernmental panel on climate change report, which is a good thing, but we need to understand our own impacts of climate science. So for example, recently there was a disaster in Uttarakhand. We need to see into our urban planning regulations, whether those disasters could be attributable to such planning or under planning or not planning enough. All these are administrative law questions, but these administrative law questions need some institutional backing, and a climate legislation could provide that. Once we have that, then we can project ourselves effectively at the world stage when it comes to Paris Agreement. So for instance, Paris Agreement says that each country needs to lower down their emission on the basis of best available science. Now, best available science can differ from country to country. A coal-reliant country in India would have a best available science of moving from coal to natural gas. A country which is already on natural gas, for them best available science will be to move from natural gas to solar or renewable without compromising justice issues. So my answer is again to the first question of what I answered, that we need to understand science from Indian perspective and contextualize it, have a climate legislation, and then effectively raise our voice at international platform. Just a note to add here, I think India has done an impeccable job with some of the arguments like common but differentiated responsibility, because India needs to develop. But I think we need to do a lot of work on the pollution issue as well, because that is also related to climate change, and a climate legislation would really help us with that.
Okay, sir. So my next question was in major controversies in past, where it states that India is advancing sustainable climate action through renewable energy and efficiency programs, yet faces challenges like fossil fuel dependence, financial limits, and
I think the answer is in decentralization. We have an overtly centralized process for oil and gas, for energy, which fails to take into consideration local issues, um, and that creates a lot of problem. A centralized regulation that is made for Madhya Pradesh would not solve the problem for people sitting in Tamil Nadu. Uh, and with that, I mean that the threshold levels for a lot of these regulations are made at the central level. But when it comes to the state level regulatory authority, like pollution control boards and state level environmental impact assessments, and for the projects like that, um, they don't have much power. It's all very centralized and rigid. And I think until and unless we have public values taken into consideration in project managements in India, especially for energy sector, people will not be able to come on board with these issues. And these are people's issues, and we need to make them on board with them. We need to make them feel that these are issues and they're going to affect it, and they're closely linked to it. So I think the first thing that India should do is to decentralize a lot of its decision making, and whilst decentralizing, not to dilute it. Because when we decentralize, we delegate a lot of discretionary powers to the executive, and they might dilute the implementation of science-based decisions. So it's a very tough task to do, to decentralize, not yet to dilute. But I think that's the key to manage a lot of climate and environmental issues in India.
Sir, I would really like to ask last question to you. How can India better integrate indigenous knowledge and community-led climate solution in national climate projects?
So I think India is doing a great job already. There is um, okay. I think there is a dichotomy here. India is doing great job in certain sectors when it comes to traditional knowledge, and not doing so great job in certain sectors. Um, you need to understand India is a land of contradictions. And in that case, integrating local knowledge becomes very difficult, um, because we have lots of communities, lots of local population with lots of religious, cultural beliefs, and the lots of different ways of life. And it is almost impossible to integrate all of them into decision making when it comes to a polycentric issue like climate change and energy transition. So it's a huge issue. Local knowledge, and already a very convoluted thing to do. And on the top of this, we have a centralized process. All of this makes it very rigid, very non-functional, and I think the solution comes from three ways. Um, Integrating local knowledge by first recognizing that there is a local knowledge that exists, making a database of it, uh, making a database of narratives. I don't think so there is any work done in India which kind of makes a database of local knowledge related to ecology, environment on a region by region basis. Imagine on district basis, we have that these are the local communities, this is how they preserve nature, this is how their relationship about nature is. Do we have a district level study of that? No. Uh, Without understanding what we need to integrate, if we go and integrate that, there will be a kind of a contradiction, right? So I think the first step is to generate that local knowledge, make it visible, make it available, and then integrate it into decision making. that requires decentralization, which I was talking about. A centralized system will not be able to do so. So I think the first step toward local knowledge is to generate that local knowledge and make it visible, convert it and make it a public output. It cannot be some intangible thing just floating in the air. There will be disputes. So yeah, make it a science. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
sir.
you.
We really look forward for such more sessions
Yeah.
with you.
Thank you very much.